So I work at EMI Music, we're a record label. We work with artists from the Beatles and Pink Floyd at one end to small artists that you've never heard of, but that we're very excited you're going to love when you do hear about them. EMI was founded in 1931, which is a long time ago. In many ways, nothing's changed in that time at EMI. It's still a business based on smart, creative, passionate people. In many ways, lots has changed in that time. And even in the last 3 years when I've been there, an awful lot has changed. It's gone from a business that made all of its decisions on gut instinct or skills or judgment. I was very proud of that. To a business where data and insight are there in all of the decisions that we make, which artists to work with, which tracks to release as the first single for an artist, how much to invest in marketing, how to invest marketing money. Really big changes. And that's happened through a partnership of not just data people, but music people. And the working together of those two groups of people to bring about this change is some of the story I want to share. And there's 4 themes, I guess, for me that come through this piece of work. First is clearly the potential that there is for data or for insight to be used. And the potential for me is all about change. It's not just about solving problems or answering questions. It's about really changing the business, the way the business operates. So that's the potential of what it is we're talking about. The next is the role of big data, the role of data in an organization. I'm going to talk a lot about this. And how you use it, what role you think it has in people's lives and decision-making is absolutely key to the impact you're going to have. Next is the importance of culture, recognizing, understanding, and fitting in with the culture of the organization. And finally, the importance of people. We talk a lot in the data world about systems and processes and technologies. I want to take a moment to talk about people and how the people are necessary to enable this kind of change. So 4 themes. First, a 2-slide background on the music industry, everything you need to know. First, the old world of music. The hits were really, really big, and they paid for all of the misses. Who cared about data? Who cared about analysis? The money was flowing, good times. I unfortunately was not around for those times. I joined in the digital age, and in the new world, it's full of challenges. Immense number of different challenges the business faces nowadays. From the need to work with brands to get our music out into the world, because we don't have the marketing money we used to have. From the need for understanding, recognizing new business models, and not new business models that we're inventing, that other people are inventing, and we need to decide how best to support them. The challenges of bringing artists and managers along on this journey in the new world, helping them to understand, helping to persuade them about the things we should be doing differently in the new world. The challenges of launching artists, making an artist successful, connecting the artist with consumers. And there are many ways to do that nowadays. The challenge of commercial relationships with all these digital partners, with all these retailers. And the fact that it's a very newsworthy industry. People like to talk about the music industry because you can put a picture of an artist next to the story. It looks good in the paper, but the stories aren't always accurate. So setting the agenda in the industry and raising the PR of the industry, setting the facts straight, is an immense challenge and an immense opportunity. So a huge number of ways in which data could help the business. And the different ways in which it could help. So these are just some of the very many. And it could be that sometimes people are struggling, they're not sure what it is they need to do, they've got a couple of options, and we help them choose between those options. It could be that people are experts in their artist or in their country or in their type of marketing, but they want information and advice on a different area, so we help them to learn things they didn't already know. It could be that 2 people are trying to describe an artist's marketing plan in 2 different countries, and they're just using literally using different language, but also just using a different language about who consumers are and how they're going to go reach these consumers. And by bringing data to that discussion and language around different types of consumers and types of opportunities, we just help them to talk to each other in a better way. So many different ways in which data helps at EMI now. How did we structure this to bring about this solution? Well, first, obviously you start with data. You turn data into insight after cranking the magic handle. From insight, you make some decisions and you're good to go, right? You're a smarter business as a result. Whereas obviously it doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. And definitely not in the music industry. And I would argue not in any business. Even in banking, buying and selling companies, it's a person that's making a decision based on emotions and feeling. And data is really important in that decision. But you've got to recognize that it's a person making a decision. It's not the data that's making the decision. And being really bold about that and honest about that, recognizing that up front, is totally key to what we've done at EMI. So what does our model look like if that's not it? Our model does start with data. Specifically, it starts with insight generated from the data and all sorts of different data. We research music. We play music to thousands of people around the world to understand who reacts in different ways to different tracks. We ask people questions. We've done more than 1 million interviews in more than 25 countries in the last 3 years, gathering hundreds of pieces of information from each interview, data-based. That consumer insight is incredibly valuable. We've got industry data of trends and patterns, and we've got sales insight, billions of records of you listening to a song on your Spotify account or playing a video on YouTube or buying a track on iTunes. All sorts of different data we're combining. So we get the insight from the data. The rest of the model, though, recognizes skills and experience alongside that. And specifically, the people who work in the business, their skills, experience, their questions totally drive both the data that we gather and analyze and the interpretation we put onto that data. They totally drive the insight agenda. And the insight agenda, in return, totally drives people. It helps them. It makes them smarter or quicker, maybe. Helps them to understand problems. And our aim in all of this, our aim is to help to change this culture towards evidence-based decision-making or reasoned arguments. Maybe it's not about making a decision, maybe it's just about persuading someone. So help someone reason their argument. So it's all about that, bringing together the data and the people and recognizing that the interplay between the two. One thing this has enabled us to do is not just to focus on the internal decision-making and making EMI a more efficient, better place for an artist to work with, but we're able to take the data and take it out into the outside world to have much bigger impact. So I mentioned these 1 million interviews that we've gathered over the last 3 years in more than 25 countries. An incredibly rich data set, hundreds of data points for each person. And what we've done is to take this 1 million interviews, package it up, and over time we're releasing it on Music Data Science, the website. So we've partnered with the guys at Data Science London for this project. It's very exciting. We're putting the data out into the world in small pieces here and there, adding up to the 1 million. And our aim is manyfold. First, to build and support the data science community by giving them something really fun to play with. Second, to put music data out in the world and help the industry to set expectations around having data to solve problems with, but also to answer some fundamental questions that are lingering in the industry so we can make the whole industry smarter. So a really different use of data than just using it in EMI to make decisions. And one of the projects we did with the data recently was a hackathon. It was so much fun. We had 2 days, a 24-hour period. We had hundreds of data scientists gathered in London and all around the world remotely dialing in, using the Kaggle platform to host the competition. And we set them a challenge to predict, based on all the different demographics, but also attitudinal, behavioral questions that we'd asked, to predict who likes which song. It was absolutely amazing. Hundreds and hundreds of hours of brilliant data science input that we never could have got otherwise. But also an immense gift to the industry and a gift to the data science community as well. So just a really wonderful partnership. And these things are possible once you've embedded insight in your organization and once you're more open to sharing. So how did we achieve this change and bring people with us? And the answer is that there's a very large number of different things that we did to enable that. And for me, I always come back to the principles that we use in the project. And we use these every single day. There are lots of them. And together, they tell the story. So when we do projects in the Insight team, we focus on all these things. It must be relevant. It must fit into somebody's life, be relevant to the questions they're wrestling with, not abstract. It must be a cheap project, so lots of cheap projects rather than one big, big, big expensive project. They must be pretty quick to deliver results, not long projects where we set a promise up front and wait. No, quick delivery of results. They should apply to all colleagues in the business. We don't tend to go and help one person with one question. We take that question and we generalize it, and then we try to help everybody who's got that question. So helping all people, not just specific teams or departments. We also try to make the results of the work powerful. If it doesn't tell you what to do, and if the thing it tells you to do isn't different from what you were going to do, if we're not bold, then it's not helpful to you. Broad, so tackling not just the question that you asked, but other types of questions that are similar, so we can influence not just that decision-making process, but other related ones. So broad in scope. Global always. If it's just a data set that only exists in one country, then it's not for us to help you with. But if it's a data set we can generalize globally and apply to every country, then we'll certainly get involved. We'd love to help. And repeatable. If it's a big one-off project that we can't afford to, or haven't got the manpower to, or for any other reason can't replicate every year or every month, then we're not interested. So scalable, repeatable solutions. And finally, at the end of the piece of work, or when we're sharing conclusions with the business, we must be able to do so in a way that builds or supports our language. So we must be talking a common language about consumer segments, perhaps, or about ways to think about an artist, perhaps, or about how people think about artists. We must be embedding language. What that means is that every time you do a piece of work, you're supporting this fundamental language. And even when there's no graphs in the meeting room, or backstage at a concert during an argument between a manager and the record label, or on a plane, even when there's no graphs and no data in that discussion, the fact that the language has been built and we've been investing in that language and that understanding means that conversation is smarter than it would otherwise have been. So language always. And finally, just about guiding decision-making, never telling someone, you must do this, the data says so. No. Show the data in a way that helps them make a decision, but it's their decision to make, and we're there to help guide, but not to tell. So a very long list of things, none of which is particularly magical, but in collection, when you add them all together, when you stick to those principles, the net result has definitely been magical for us. So some of why that works so well, I think some lessons I've learned. So one was really listening to the in-house expertise. And I saw many projects over the years at EMI and at other businesses I've worked in where people would do consultations with the business, consult the business, and then they'd come up with a project as a result of that. It's just really, really different than actually listening to people, engaging with people, and understanding people. And we did that really well, and hence they really shaped what we did. People really know their stuff. They might not know the right language to describe consumers or artists. They might not be able to give you the facts and figures, but they know their stuff, so teasing that out was really, really key. Again, giving hypotheses back to the business or guiding the business, not giving them the conclusion from the piece of work, letting them make the decisions. And projects that were intuitive and that worked or fitted in to the way people worked or the decisions they were wrestling with. And then one of the key skills, I think, as you go through and build a big project, and this was all built totally from scratch, one of the key skills was reducing down the problems and really focusing on what it is you're trying to deliver, which is not just reducing down the business questions. So instead of trying to answer everything in every possible combination, really understanding what the decision was that person was trying to make and helping that person to make that decision, really focusing in instead of trying to do everything. But also really focusing in on the data that you're using as well. So while we've got terabytes of data that we're using for this project, in any one piece of analysis, there's a very small subset of that data that you need to analyze. And in terms of giving the results back to the business, you're probably going to draw a graph or give them a sentence or maybe a table, right, which is a very, very small subset of the overall data set. So recognizing that, yes, although we've got big data, and we could be talking about that, any one project can be incredibly focused, actually, incredibly manageable, and therefore quicker and easier as a result. So really reducing down the business questions and reducing down the data as well were really, really key for us. The challenge, we talk a lot in this industry about the technologies and the systems and the processes. And my strong view is that we need to talk way more about people. So if you think here, this is my sketch of the value chain going from at the top saying, okay, let me work out what this useful business question is where data can actually help with the decision, right down to the bottom of the value chain where you present the results and the recommendations in a way that's bold and inspiring, but also overcomes questions and suspicions from the person you're presenting to. There's a whole chain of different things that happen between there and there, gathering data, finding data, cleaning data, storing data, all sorts of things. The common theme for me as I look at this is people are all the way through this process. How do you identify the useful business questions? Well, only a person can. What's the question? Well, a person asks the question. Is the data appropriate for the question that's being asked? Well, that's the person. Is the technology appropriate for the data that you've got? What other data is relevant? And right down to the end, again, it's about recommendations, not data. Bold and inspiring delivery of those recommendations, because the person you're delivering it to might not be that excited about it. You've got to be bold. You've got to inspire them with the work. And they've got questions and suspicions, very probably. And if you're not smart and on the ball, you're not going to overcome those questions and suspicions. You're not going to build trust, and nothing's going to happen as a result of your piece of work. So all the way through this is people, people, people. And I can't emphasize the importance of this enough. And I spend most of my time worrying about this and very little of my time worrying about technology. The final, I guess, lesson that we learned as we went through this was the importance of, and this sounds odd, but proving something before you bother to build it. Let me explain what that means with an example. So one of the key things we do is help people to think about an artist and the consumers that artist appeals to and the type of appeal they have with each type of consumer. To do that, we have a report that you look at. And how did we start this project? Well, we started it with an Excel file on my laptop, which worked for about 1 to 10 artists. It's not very scalable or repeatable. It's not very global, but we got started. And out of that, we did major deals with household name artists, and we set the strategy for huge projects, just on that 1 to 10. So we knew it was working. We honed it and refined it as we went through, but we knew it worked. So we invested a bit, not very much, but we slightly beyond my coding skills, we had somebody automate the spreadsheet a little bit more and then bang out copies of the spreadsheet to network drives. It's a bit more distributed, right? Really quick. Only works for about 10 to 100 artists. Really low risk, but scales pretty well. And by that point, all of our major artists had a report, and we were helping on loads of projects. We hadn't really spent any tech money yet. Then people around the world wanted to get in on the action, so that doesn't scale. We put this Excel services framework on top of the Excel sheet. It looks like a web report to everybody else. It's a website. You have drop-down boxes. Well, people all around the world could suddenly access this data. And we're helping with a kind of 100 to 1,000 artists. Managers of artists are getting on planes and flying around the world, and they're having reports handed to them at each stop. It's the same language, the same frameworks. We're global. Doesn't scale very well beyond that. So we go to the next level of technology and the next and the next. Each one scales better, but at every point we've proved what it is we're doing. We know what we need. We know it's working, and then we invest to build the more scalable version of it. Totally low risk. And by the way, I think this methodology doesn't just work for reporting and graphs and front ends. It works just as well to the level of data science that you apply to a problem. The quick and dirty model that you knock up in an afternoon is infinitely better than having no model at all. Then you can refine it with a 3-month serious data scientist down the road who can squeeze out another 10% of efficiency. Great. But the quick version adds loads of benefits. So do that first, prove it, then invest in more efficient versions of it. So prove, then build for us was absolutely key. And I guess I wanted to just end with some lessons that I draw from all of this. So the first really clearly is work with the business, not at arm's length. Feel part of the business and have them feel like they're part of your team. Absolutely fundamental to everything. The second is make sure that insight is part of the day-to-day life of people. It's not a separate process that they have to go through, a separate part of the website or a separate meeting in the planning process. Just embed it into what it is they're doing. Also embed the language, even embed the people. So we have our insight experts. They sit in each of the teams around the world. They're not in my team. They don't sit in London. They sit in the teams of the business. They're embedded in the business. Next, the insight capability overall build it so that you can iterate it, so that it evolves as part of your business, as your business evolves, or as the questions evolve. Don't outsource it. Don't ask a market research agency to give you a survey. Build it yourself. And finally, exactly where I started, I think. Gut instinct, skills, judgment, people, however you describe it, but celebrate that alongside data. Don't be afraid of it, and don't try and squash it. Thanks very much.